Hello, it's Eden. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is the fourth video in a 5-part series dedicated to adults with newly diagnosed ADHD. These are just some tips that I have learned that has helped me cope with the day-to-day stresses of having ADHD. Today's video is all about the body, our human body, and the things that we can do to just help ourselves and our body perform at its peak. So without further ado, let's get stuck into it. The first tip is get 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. That is very difficult, I know, when it comes to ADHD because we're often the type to try to go to bed really early, but then we'll end up staying up until 2 a.m. on social media or just not being able to sleep because we just have racing thoughts and, just aren't able to calm ourselves down. It actually is counterproductive for us to get less sleep. The less sleep we have, the worse our symptoms actually get. It helps to be in low light, as low and dimmer light as possible. If you are using your phone, use a blue light filter because that will take the blue light out. I do recommend a nighttime routine if you don't have one already. They are incredibly helpful because it just helps signal your brain that it's time to wind down and it's time to go to sleep. Avoid things like coffee unless you're the type of person that can fall asleep after a coffee. I know that a lot of my friends with ADHD, some of them will like to drink coffee at nighttime because it helps them relax, which is fair enough. You can also take the vitamin melatonin. That's a really handy vitamin to have at nighttime if you're struggling to get to sleep. What works for you, but as long as you're getting that full 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night, just so your brain can function properly the next day, that's the most important part. So do your best to get a good night's sleep. That's tip 1. Tip 2 is to eat the right foods. Just like sleep, it's a pretty obvious tip. Eating the right foods keeps the right fuel in our body. We tend to need more protein than most other people because that's the type of food that lasts longer in our system. It makes us feel fuller. We tend to burn through food pretty quickly. It's why we are always going for carbs. It's why we're always going for sugar. It's why we're always going for caffeine. It's okay to have caffeine, obviously, but try to limit the amount of caffeine that you have during the day because it is quite unhealthy to rely just on caffeine. And I feel quite hypocritical as I say this because I have a coffee sitting next to me. If you're the type of person who doesn't really like to eat much during the day or doesn't really like to eat a lot of big meals, you can break your meals up to, instead of 3 to 6, so you can have 6 small meals instead of 3 big meals. I personally just tend to eat when I'm hungry and I try to go for foods that have a lot of protein in them. If you are newly diagnosed, you may be taking medication. Depending on the type of medication that you're on, the more acidic your stomach is, the less your medication will absorb and the less that it will help you. The only exception to the rule there is Vyvanse, which is lisdexamphetamine. It goes into your system and then gets converted into an amphetamine. If somebody wants to comment below if you know more about Vyvanse than I do, that would be great. I'll pin the comment. I'll be very happy. We'll all be happy. So come be a nerd and take me to school. I'd appreciate it. On the subject of medication, when you are taking your meds, make sure that you stay well away from anything citrusy. Citrus blocks your absorption of your medication just like having an acidic stomach does. So make sure that you're not taking it with orange juice, just take it with water. And I know water's boring, believe me, I know water's really boring, but that's just the best thing that you can take with your medication is water. And also if you can have a snack with it because medication can really upset our stomachs during the day. Tip number 3 is make sure the right vitamins are getting in your system. If you're not taking fish oil, you should be taking fish oil. It's very good for the brain, obviously. It's another one of those vitamins that really help us focus because of the EPA that it's in it. If you can go for one that's higher EPA versus DHA, then that will be better for your brain. Another one is magnesium. Medication does sap you quite a bit of magnesium. So if you find that you're taking medication in the morning and you're having a burnout or you're crashing by the afternoon, you can take a magnesium supplement. I personally take them at nighttime because I get really sore legs at nighttime and magnesium's really handy in just taking the pains away from my muscles. If you take medication, don't take magnesium with your medication, especially magnesium citrate, the one that's based on citrus, because citrus also blocks the uptake of your medication. It's also worthy to note that vitamins aren't the fix. Vitamins aren't the thing that's going to fix everything. You really do need to make sure that you're eating a diet that's rich in all of those vitamins. So if you don't eat fish, try and incorporate fish into your diet at least a couple of times a week. Same thing with magnesium. If you don't get enough magnesium, try and incorporate foods that do have magnesium. Here's a bunch of foods that have a lot of magnesium in it that you can eat. Just ensure that you're getting the right vitamins in your system. If you take other vitamins that you feel really help with your ADHD, please let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to add them to my list of vitamins that I need to incorporate into my diet. And the last tip is to make sure that you get your daily exercise. Make sure that you move around during the day. What I learned when I took my son to see an occupational therapist, an OT, is we're more likely to fidget if we have excess energy in our system. And the best way to expel excess energy is through a term called heavy work. Heavy work is essentially things like moving chairs, lifting boxes, pushing, pulling, doing things that just really exhaust you quite a bit. So weightlifting is a really good one for heavy work, obviously, but heavy work is really good because it helps us expel that excess energy and helps us sit for longer. I find that when it comes to having ADHD, that the less we move around, the less we want to move around. There's this huge resistance that tends to build up after a while when we get very sedentary, and we get really fidgety, we get really restless. I always just have this underlying feeling of restlessness that I should be moving, that I should be doing something, but I also have this wall of resistance. I've heard it being termed the wall of awful. It's this wall of resistance, and it makes it a lot harder to go out and exercise and just do the things that you need to do. So if you find that you are frequently meeting resistance, especially when it comes to moving around, now is the perfect time for you to start trying to incorporate a little more exercise into your day. Those are all the tips that I can think of off the top of my head to help you. If you have any that you know of that's really helpful for you and your body and just keeping your motor ticking along nicely, then let me know in the comments below. I'd be really happy and interested to hear about them. If you haven't already and you like my content, please subscribe. It lets me know that I'm doing a good job, and it's also handy because if you're subscribed, then you can see all the new videos that I sporadically, upload. Keep an eye out on my channel. I've got one more video after this, and that is focusing on our brains, which is probably the most important part of having ADHD, what with it being, our brains being differently rewired and all. Until next time, my name is Eden. I have lots of ideas, and I'll see you in the next video to talk about more of them. Ta-ta!